most of your Walt Disney World vacation.
The top 6 most beautiful gardens at Disney World. Hi, I'm Herb Leibacher, and welcome to episode number 110 of the World of Walt podcast. Make the most of your Walt Disney World vacation for the week of February 26th, 2017. This is the podcast for Walt Disney World fans, whether you're planning your next trip or just enjoy reliving a little bit of Disney magic. As we sit here in the midst of wintertime, we can look forward to spring when the warm sun returns and when the flowers start to pop up. I am personally not much of a gardener, but I do enjoy the beauty of gardens where nature and man's hard work come together and make something that is both living and amazing. Fortunately, the hundreds of horticultural specialists at Disney are hard at work year-round, and they create and maintain some amazing gardens for us to enjoy, and we don't have to pull any of the weeds. So today we're going to take a look at the 6 most beautiful gardens at Disney World. To help me explore this topic, I'd like to welcome a man with a very green thumb, Russ Reeves. Russ, welcome back.
Oh, thanks. I had to just pull my hand out of the green paint bucket because that's the only way I'm going to get a green thumb. I do not have a green thumb at all. My house is where vegetation comes to die. I'm like the Dr. Kevorkian of the plant kingdom. Everything I've ever tried to plant has not lived long. So I'm like you. I love to see a beautiful garden, but I just don't have the knack for producing one.
Yeah, it takes a lot of skill and effort and I guess knowledge too, which I don't have those things that come together in the right combination. So it's nice to be able to enjoy it when someone else does have those things in the right combination.
Yeah, and Walt Disney World and Disneyland both have a lot of it for us to enjoy.
Yes, they do. For the warm-up question today, I tried to think of what's the opposite of a garden. So here's my very different kind of warm-up question. To you, where does it feel like you see the largest expanse of concrete at Disney World that isn't a parking lot?
Well, there's always a lot of debate about which park is the hottest, and you hear a lot of people say Animal Kingdom is hot. I've even heard people use the expression "it's Animal Kingdom out here," but I think the hottest place to be on a really hot sunny day is Epcot, and particularly maybe Future World, because you are just surrounded by nothing but concrete, and there's very little shade and very little there to just kind of absorb that heat. So you're getting it from the sun, you're getting it bouncing up off the pavement. So I have been at Epcot on some excruciatingly hot days when that concrete was really just radiating back on us.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think Disney tried to put up these sort of sale things around where the pin store is. And maybe that helps provide a little bit of shade, but that is still a very hot area and a big expanse of concrete too.
Yeah, they're also an eyesore.
Yeah. But we won't go there. Okay, so for me, the largest expanse, and it's probably not technically by surface area the largest expanse, but there is this walk from the Cinderella's Royal Carousel, or I think it might be Prince Charming's Royal Carousel, somebody's carousel in the Magic Kingdom, all the way back to the Tangled Rust area, where it just seems like it's concrete from one end to the other. And there's buildings and there's concrete and not a lot of greenery. Now, I think that the new Fantasyland helped to soften that a little bit, because when you look around the area of the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, it's very lush. The Bell meet and greet is very lush. But that spot around where It's a Small World is and where Peter Pan is just seems like a big old slab of concrete to me.
It is, and when the sun is high in the sky, like middle of the day, noontime sun, that is really hot there.
Yeah, it is. It is. Okay, so we covered the concrete, so let's get back to the topic for today, the beautiful gardens where hopefully it's not quite so hot. And Russ, number one is over to you.
Okay, so when I think about gardens, I think about flower gardens and gardens where food is grown. And two examples immediately came to mind. So the first one I'll say is the flower garden that immediately came to mind, and that's the one in front of the Magic Kingdom train station with the big floral Mickey face in it. That is the marker that tells me that I'm home. I've been greeted by that Mickey face for many years, and some of my earliest memories of Disneyland and Walt Disney World are photographs of me as a young child standing in front of that floral Mickey. And, when you think about all the things that have changed at Disneyland and Walt Disney World over the years, this has remained the same, is that there is this beautiful floral Mickey there to greet you when you walk up to the Magic Kingdom. It may not always be the same color. It may not always be the same variety of flowers. So in that sense, it's sort of always new and different, but yet always familiar, always the same. And it's beautiful, and it's very welcoming, and it's one of my favorite gardens in all of Walt Disney World, and I would say Disneyland as well.
That's a great one, and I wonder how many people have photos in their phone or their photo album, if you're old school, of the family standing in front of the train station and that floral Mickey display. I know somewhere in a photo album, I've got one back before we had phones of me and a friend who were visiting that day. So it's a great iconic spot, very beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, number one. So number two, over to me. I actually debated this one in my head because I think some people may hear what I'm about to say and call me crazy. And maybe in their head, that song, Paved Paradise and Put Up a Parking Lot, is going to come to mind. But I am going to stay in the Magic Kingdom, and I am going to go to the Castle Hub, which is maybe an interesting choice because not so long ago, a huge green area was cut out of the hub where the Rose Garden was and greatly reduced. And so that whole area expanded quite a bit, and there's plenty more concrete, and there's AstroTurf as well. But I decided to pick it because even in the expanse of concrete and AstroTurf, there are some beautiful floral and fountain displays around the Castle Hub. And there are still a few trees there as well. So while it's not really serving a purpose of just a garden, and there are plenty of not garden-like features of the Castle Hub now, I do think that a lot of the flowers that are there are beautiful. There are densely packed spots where there are a lot of flowers around the Partners statue and around some of the perimeter of the hub now, where they've moved some other statuary and where they've added some fountains. So even though I debated in my own head whether or not to include this because I think it's become more famous for becoming less green, there are still a lot of nice garden-like features of the Castle Hub.
You did say it was okay for people to call you crazy, right?
And they do. So, yeah, join the chorus, man.
It is beautiful. I'll give you that. And I really appreciate that when these changes were made, they did it with an aesthetic touch. But I miss all that original lush vegetation that was there. And, I like those grassy areas, but yeah, they're AstroTurf, which, I don't want people out there having to mow the lawn in the middle of the day, but, it just, I don't know. It's not the same to me as it used to be, but I will give you this. They did at least make it attractive. And so, I can appreciate that.
Yeah. I remember wandering through the Rose Garden before it got ripped out and thinking how beautiful and serene it was. And not a lot of people would go back there. And I think some people had very special memories because that's where their fiance proposed to them, or they had a special photograph there. But I also walked through there thinking 100 feet away, people are packed in like sardines. And here is this huge and beautiful area that's probably not at its best use. So Yeah, I mean, we could probably do a whole show about the Castle Hub and the good and bad of it. But I do really like a lot of the features of it. And I do like the fact that there is still a lot of floral display in the area. There's some nice fountains now. And I think they did a good job. And I think it's much more functional now for what it needs to be.
Yeah, if it had to change, I'm happy with the change. I wish it didn't have to change.
Yes.
And I think I say that on every episode of All the Walt.
And now if I fit in a comment about free chocolate, we could just end right here. But we will continue.
We'll work in free chocolate and food, and we'll have a complete episode.
Okay, that was number 2, which is debatable. And yes, people on Facebook, you can make a nasty comment. But that was a Castle Hub. So number 3 is over to you, Russ.
Well, so I'll work in a reference to food, because the second kind of garden I think of is the garden where you grow things that you eat. And there's a great place to see that in Walt Disney World. It's in Epcot, which I know I said earlier that Epcot was the biggest anti-garden I could think of, biggest swath of concrete. But within Epcot and the Land Pavilion, the Living with the Land attraction is one of my favorite attractions. It's a last vestige of original Epcot. It's a real edutainment experience. And you ride through and you see all these wonderful plants growing and all these fruits and vegetables. And, I can remember as a kid going through that attraction and thinking, like, some of these gardening methods just look like space-age technology. And now some of them are commonly used, but a lot of them are still really ahead of their time. And along the way, there are some fun touches like hidden Mickeys and things like that. When we first bounced this topic around, the word garden just immediately triggered Living with the Land in my mind as a place that I love to go to and love to see all that stuff growing in there.
Yeah, it's a great choice. And, it's interesting. It didn't pop into my head, but it absolutely should be on the list, because it's a garden in its truest sense. It's a whole attraction built around a garden. And it's a fun one, too. And I think you're right. There are some pieces of the research garden that we now see in lots of places. Maybe your strawberries were grown that way. And there are other pieces which maybe are still a little cutting edge. I'm always fascinated by the one, and I'm sure it has a special name, where there's sort of plants on the top and fish on the bottom, and so the plants feed the fish and the fish feed the plants. I think that's always kind of neat. But the land and the Living with the Land boat ride, I think, is a great addition to the list.
Yeah, and they always say something in there, and I can't believe I don't remember the exact line that they say, but about a certain percentage of the food served in Disney restaurants comes from that pavilion, or maybe it's the opposite, that a certain percentage of the food grown there ends up being served in Disney restaurants. And I think it would be interesting to kind of follow that trail of, like where is this stuff going when it leaves the pavilion? Because certainly it doesn't seem like they grow enough inside the attraction to service that many restaurants and that many people dining, but at least some of it ends up on the table somewhere in Walt Disney World. Yeah,
which is very neat. It's neat that the produce can be put to good use and very nearby.
Yeah.
Okay, that was number 3. Number 4 is back over to me. Okay, so this I think we can rename as the Call Herb Crazy episode, because this may be another one where people hear my item here and say, "Are you crazy?" But I'm going to go for it. I'm going back over to the Magic Kingdom, and I am going to Tomorrowland. So when I think about Tomorrowland, I'll often think of the original incarnation from the 70s, which is very white and pale blue and austere. And Tomorrowland really has changed a lot. It's hard to keep up with the future, and I think the retro Tomorrow is a good choice for Disney to make something that stands the test of time. And when I think of Tomorrow, I don't necessarily think of gardens and flowers, but there are some wonderful plantings there, which I think really add pops of color and life to Tomorrowland in what is otherwise maybe a little more stark of an area. And because they I think contrast with the stark nature of the rest of Tomorrowland, I think some of the plantings really stick out. I think some of the trees that have been very neatly trimmed into sort of futuristic shapes, I think are really nicely done, and I think some of the flower beds are really nicely done. So while it may not be a traditional spot that you think of gardens at Walt Disney World, I think that a lot of the plants and the trees around Tomorrowland really add a lot to that area.
And you're sure you know what a garden is, right?
I've seen gardens before, yes. On Wikipedia, they've got a lot of them.
6 reasons Herb is crazy. I will say this. Tomorrowland was nowhere on my radar screen when you said top 6 gardens. I considered it when you asked me what the largest expanse of concrete was. But, to give you credit for your choice, is it true? I think I heard this somewhere that every tree and plant in Tomorrowland is edible?
I do not know. And I don't know of a way to test this theory, but it's an interesting one.
I heard that. I mean, somewhere besides just me saying it just now. I heard somebody else who knows what they're talking about say it. And it's supposed to kind of point to this, future of sustainable living, and, everything is edible. So your food comes from and your plants are producing your food for you. So I didn't know if that was actually true or just something that people say. And if it is true, I wonder how they would feel if you just walked through there and pluck off something and take a bite out of it. I imagine that would be frowned upon, but
probably.
Yeah. So I heard that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. There's something else in Tomorrowland, which is a very futuristic garden-like element, and that's the power palms. Have you seen the power palms at Tomorrowland?
I have. And when you said Tomorrowland, I thought, surely he's not talking about those robotic palm trees.
I think they belong on the list, even though, you can have gardens in the future that are made out of metal. So yeah, the power palms, which are kind of between Rocket Tower Plaza and Space Mountain, and they have these metallic balls of coconuts, and the story goes that that's the way that energy is collected in the future, and actually then gets distributed at Tomorrowland Power and Light, which is the exit facility for Space Mountain. So yeah, that's not real vegetation, but it's part of the garden story at Tomorrowland. And again, I think a nice contrast to some of the flower plantings that are around there. Okay.
The leaves on those palms are solar panels, right?
I think the story is that it's a way to collect energy, and so maybe that would be solar-like, yeah, or some addition of that in the future. Yep.
Okay.
All right, I promised to redeem myself on my last one, but that was my number 4. So number 5, back to you.
Okay, well, I think this is the largest garden that I can think of in Walt Disney World, and this is the Victoria Gardens in the Canada Pavilion of World Showcase at Epcot. It is called the Victoria Gardens, but it is patterned after a garden in Victoria, British Columbia. I'm not sure that I'm saying the name right. The Butchart Gardens. And I think that I've read somewhere. I should do more research before we record, so I don't have to say I think I heard or I think I read. But it rings a bell that it's the largest garden area in World Showcase, and I've also heard that it requires the most maintenance. Like it has to have more people, more resources to maintain it. And certainly, if you stroll through that garden, you can see why. It is always immaculate. I mean, the The grass is always just beautifully maintained. The flowers are always perfect. And it's one of my favorite little quiet, relaxing places on a crowded day in Epcot, just to pull aside and have some serenity there. So yeah, the Victoria Gardens in Epcot, the Canada Pavilion, needs to be on your list if you love beautiful places and beautiful gardens.
This was a good one, and if you didn't mention it, I was going to, because I do think it really is an extraordinary area. I think, like you say, the flowers are always immaculately maintained. The grass, I don't know, they must go out there and cut it every night because it always looks perfect. And it's a big expanse too, so it makes a big impression. And so the little winding walkway that goes from the promenade back down to where you can go to Le Cellier is I think one of the most beautiful and well maintained spots in all of Epcot, maybe in all of Walt Disney World.
I stand down there on that little curving walkway, sometimes looking out toward the promenade, and I just think about how many thousands of people walk past that every day and don't even know it's there, don't even pay attention to it, and never venture down in there into that garden. Now, I'm not complaining. That makes it a quiet, tranquil place.
Yeah.
But I just think it is a hidden gem. It's hidden in plain sight. It's right there. You walk right past it. But so many people just don't even pay attention to it because their mind is set on their dining reservation or their next fast pass or getting to the next pavilion to do the next thing, and they just miss it. It's really one of the most beautiful places and most tranquil places in all of Walt Disney World.
I agree. Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, take a few minutes to go back and check it out. It's worth it. Okay, that was number 5, Canada. So number 6, back to me. I actually debated between 2 different Epcot pavilions for this one, and maybe I'll sneak them both in. I don't normally cheat, but I may do that here. So I thought about going to France because the hedges are trimmed in amazing ways in the France pavilion. I think maybe reminiscent of what you could see at Versailles or a grand estate in France. But I'm not choosing France. I'm actually choosing the next door neighbor, which is the United Kingdom. And I think that the United Kingdom also has some very nicely manicured gardens, proper English gardens, with beautiful flowers in addition to the hedges. And you can see some of these directly from the promenade between where you walk and the shops. But if you take a little bit of time to wander into the back, which is a little bit quieter, you can also see some beautifully maintained areas too. So I don't think this has the impact of Canada where you see, just it looks like mile after mile of flowers. But I do think the mix of hedges and manicured trees and flowers all coming together and designed in a very British way is a beautiful spot to check out.
Well, you said you were going to redeem yourself, and you did. You actually included a proper garden on your list of top 6 gardens. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I love the gardens in France. I love the gardens in the UK pavilion. Between the two, I think I prefer the UK. And you're right. You've really got to get back in there off of the promenade to really appreciate the beauty of it. It just fits. It just belongs there. And, so make sure you go back there and check those out. They're really great.
Yeah, it is definitely worth checking out. Okay, today the top 6 most beautiful gardens at Walt Disney World and some weird ones. So number 1, the Magic Kingdom train station. Number 2, the Castle Hub. Yes, I said the Castle Hub. Number 3, the Land Pavilion. 4, Tomorrowland. 5, Canada. And 6, the United Kingdom, or France, depending on which side of the soccer match you're on. Okay, so
flip a coin.
Exactly. So Russ, that was a fun list. Thanks again, as always, for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. I really wish I was there in Victoria Gardens right now, just enjoying the beauty of that place. This was a good list to sort of just think about these wonderful places.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Canada, my Canada, you're a lifetime journey for the traveler.
Today we head out to some old-time music from the Epcot Canada Pavilion, and while we have made it through the list of the top 6 most beautiful gardens at Disney World, our conversation doesn't have to be over. I'd like to hear what you think too. You can add your comments and add to the list by visiting the show notes page at worldofwalt.com/110. It's a page that works nicely on tablets, desktops, and smartphones. I'd like to thank everyone who's been in contact with me, and I'd like to invite you to follow me on social media, facebook.com/worldofwalt and pinterest.com/worldofwalt. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I would appreciate it if you would spread the word. Tell your family and your friends about it. To wrap up for today, as always, a heartfelt thank you for spending some of your time with me. I'd also like to thank everyone who visits the worldofwalt.com site, where you can read interesting Disney articles and chat with other folks who enjoy Disney. By listening here and by visiting the site, you allow me to share the fun of Disney with you, and that is very cool. Thank you so much for being a part of it. So until next time, my friend, may God bless you.
So there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, shining at the end of every day. There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, just a dream away.